Hey, welcome to another segment of the Vegas Dice Kings.
Yes.
On my right, I have patent pending, myself, Danny Craps, and our
Craps.
special guest, Howard Blank, all the
Howard
way
Blank.
from Canada.
Yes. And he's got some exceptional stories he's going to tell us here in a minute. I've got to get an acknowledgement to a couple of people out there. Kevin, if you're listening, you got to start betting the hard ways for your friends a little bit more. There's a few of you out there that, that need to do it. Bob, you need to run a little bit more. You need to get out and walk a little bit. And leave the peaches alone, Bob. Please leave the peaches. Gil, you got to learn how to putt and hit with the driver. Come on, please. It's just terrible. Thad, put your hat on forward. You always got it backwards. Put it on forward, man. This is the 20s now. Come on. Anyhow, I'm going to turn this over to Howard Blank. Man, he's got some
We're excited.
exceptional.
We're excited.
Really excited.
My ears will be like Dumbo's before it's over.
Howard, please take it away.
Well, thanks, gentlemen. Good to be here. It's nice to be live in Las Vegas and seeing the world back to a little bit more normalcy. We're still a little behind you in terms of mask mandates and other things, but it's great to be here. My affinity to gaming and particularly craps and all things Vegas go back to the early 80s. I was working for a local newspaper while I was finishing high school, and I saw there was a charity casino downtown Vancouver. It was like, casino? Remember, in Canada, casinos were illegal.
Right.
So I looked, and sure enough, Trudeau had made a change to the law that you could have charity casino nights, $5 limits, etc., volunteer dealers, and these charities could make a little bit more money, sort of like a bingo night. I went and covered it. It was amazing. And the gentleman said, well, if you'd like to work, we're at the annual state fair, which is called our P&E. And we have the world's largest roulette pit, which was 30 tables at the time with $5 limits.
That's a lot.
And some Wheel of Fortunes, you call them big six wheels and things like that. So I went there and I worked for a company called Great Canadian Casino Supply Company. When I was going to university, I worked with them as a volunteer and I got my marketing degree. Long story short, I ended up as their vice president of media, entertainment, and responsible gambling. And I left before Apollo, which is the company that, as we all know, has acquired the Venetian. Apollo acquired them, and it closed earlier last year. And now I'm actually back with them doing some work on the theaters that I created in the province. So I'm going to be I have a contract with the company to do some work there. So that's sort of how I got involved with gambling and had been involved in the industry. I also lived in China. I was there. We had a casino cruise ship. We hired dealers from the Philippines, and we were there in 2000. And that didn't work because, unfortunately, it's a controlled market, so we couldn't get people on from advertising. You had to have the bad guys, and we couldn't be around them, as we all know, with gaming control, etc.
Yes.
Then we built a casino in Lithuania. I lived there in Middle Europe.
Wow.
Built that casino and had a lot of fun doing that, and then we sold that to our partners there. And then came back. Obviously, we opened up a number of large properties coast to coast, from River Rock in Vancouver all the way to we acquired Halifax, Nova Scotia, and then of course Ontario, and now we have Woodbine, one of the largest casinos in North America at Woodbine. Or I should say they have it. In between then, I worked for a number of years on film and television. And one of the niches I became was a gaming expert. So when films were being shot, they would call upon me to help train the actors or help set up the scene or help design what the casino would look like. My first big film was Rocky IV. I worked just as a PA there, giving away prizes in the ring in 85. And then I came down to Vegas at the old MGM Grand for the big fight scene with Apollo Creed.
Yes.
And I've got a great picture of James Brown that I think you'll get to see working with him, which was pretty amazing. And that was a lot of fun. Then I came back and did a number of TV shows like MacGyver, etc. And then worked my way into some big feature films in the late 90s, early 2000s. I worked with John Frankenheimer on Reindeer Games. I handled all the dealers for that film, helped with the big robbery scene and how it would look like, and worked with him and the technical director on that, which was my first big credit. Then I did Walking Tall with The Rock. Again, we've got some photos, I think, to share with you. That was really a lot of fun working with in that film. Again, all filmed in Vancouver, a suburb, actually, Richmond. When you see that, there's a key scene where the dealer is switching the die out to cheat The Rock in a game of craps. And that was me teaching the dealer how to manipulate the dice with his hand and everything. And then when The Rock gets mad and the dealer throws a stick down, I'm hiding. You don't see me, but the chips go flying in the air to give a more dramatic effect that he had pounded the table.
Wow.
Also had done a number of every TV series you can think of, from Psych that was filmed there to, you'll see a floating craps table that we did. It was to go back to the days of Kennedy. It was supposed to be the Sands here in Las Vegas.
Hotel,
and it was with Giancana, and it was supposed to be where the mob was trying to get a nuclear weapon. And it was all, and so they were shooting you could see them playing craps while the explosion was going on, the nuclear testing that used to happen in the desert.
Wow.
So there's a lot of fun with that. And I've always enjoyed gaming. A great story to share with you is one of our founders was, for his 75th birthday, we brought him to Binion's for the World Series of Poker. And that's, so it was going back to, early 90s.
Oh, yes.
He made it through to day 3.
He did.
And which was amazing, but it was killing him. He was too old. He lost quads over quads. He had quad queens and quad aces beat him. He was actually happy to be out because he said he couldn't take it anymore. But you talk about a bad beat. The guy had pocket aces. He didn't put them all in before the flop. He had pocket queens. The flop was queen, queen, ace. He bet, the guy put them all in. He went all in, and then on the river an ace came. So it was quad. Wow. No bad beat, but it was quads over quads. So and I was there. I was media because I worked in radio as well for many, many years, sort of as the Hollywood North reporter, interviewing stars and stuff, and I had a media pass, so it was nice to be inside the rail to help him out and follow that. And I played in the media tournament, and I came in third. So I won $20-something thousand for charity.
Wow.
Which was really cool back then. Yeah, that was a lot of fun to do that.
Great
Charity's great.
It was. And now, of course, I love craps. I think it is the most energetic game around. I think it also is the most addictive, probably, because when it's going well, that cash machine is rolling in. When it's going bad, you could see tumbleweeds going down the table. And I've seen it all. But it's funny, a lot of stars that I work with, you'll see that they really get into it. So, like, I worked on reindeer games and taught Ben Affleck how to play poker.
Oh, great.
And that was a lot of fun. Then, of course, he became a big gambler at one point, and then he stopped. And then working with other stars on that. And they love, like, we had a poker table when we weren't shooting, we'd play blackjack together and just goof around, etc. And I should say, in the early days, I was a dealer. So I deal roulette, I deal blackjack, I deal every game but craps. So I think I could deal craps because we didn't have craps. Yes. Because in Canada, dice were illegal. Not until the 2000s. The statute was changed. You could have craps with a wheel, with arrows. And, in California, they have craps with decks of cards. Yes. So you could have it, but it didn't happen. And then in the early 2000s, they made dice legal. Just like last year, we made single bet sports wagering legal. In Canada, you had to do a parlay. You couldn't bet one bet. Nope. So now it's the Wild West in Canada of all the companies coming in and wanting to, of course, And it was huge, $1 billion underground economy.
Wow, that is huge.
Yes, yes. I was familiar with a gentleman, Eugene Melnick. He also liked to play, a little blackjack and other games at chance, and he really enjoyed himself too.
I think you also find with gambling that I've noticed is true entrepreneurs are risk takers, maybe calculated risk takers, but they also want to try and beat an edge against them, so they'll play in games because it's the thrill of beating that edge, right? Knowing full well that you're not supposed to win. These beautiful palaces weren't built on losers. On their losing, I should say, exactly. But they still want to take that risk, and I think you see that. Whatever level you're at. If you're a billionaire, now they're betting $10,000 a hand. If you're a millionaire, you're betting $1,000. What your level is, and I think that also helps the gaming business survive as well. As aside from those people just coming in for fun play, you got people who are, I wouldn't say professional, but they have that psyche and mentality to say, I have this much to lose. I want to play, and they enjoy the thrill of the hunt. It's almost like going out there.
Howard, you hit it on the nail on the head. I recall this gentleman, and he said, I got everything in life. He said, everything you can imagine. He says, and sometimes, like the thrill of having your first car and your first. Sure. He says, the thrill of betting this much money, knowing that I could lose my $5 million. He said, it gets me juiced up.
Sure.
Juiced.
Like Max, the mattress king, who just lost $10 million.
Yes. And, exactly.
And the last year he won 7, right? So, yeah, there is something about that. It's also, the endorphins that go in. And that's where you have that fine line between having fun, enjoying, and then being responsible and having addictive nature. Because like anything, whether it's drinking, whatever, you can go too far. And I seen that. I even myself, when I'm getting fun and excited, I used to go, sign here for a credit marker, right? It didn't really matter because it was just pretend until you had to pay at the end.
Yes.
And I learned a good lesson. One time I said, I lost more than I really was comfortable with. And I said, from now on, I'll bring my own money. And that's a good thing if you're out there thinking about it, even though you can still sign, but it's your money at the cage. And you can have a good budget, because that's important. If you're going to play a wonderful game, have fun. I also think it's also the dealers. It's enjoying the company of great dealers, and they're few and far between great dealers. There's lots of wonderful dealers, but great ones that really make you feel like you're at home. And there's a few that I've come across here in Vegas that I wish we could replicate and have around the world, because that is part of your experience. Like anything else, I sort of say gambling is the same as going to play pinball. It costs you so much. At the end of your game, you might win a free game, which is great, but you want to have fun and get value. If you can get both of that, then you're hitting the win, right?
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Exactly. That's what we tried to do in our career since we broke in the early 70s. And, of course, we went table for table, so there was even more incentive to go that extra mile, to personalize the experience with your guest, to know his name, his wife, his girlfriend, the dog, anybody. And you would always remember that. You'd go write it down when you got
Right.
home. You were like a host.
Yes.
You went and wrote it down. Especially if you were making a lot of money from him, you'd find out from the pit clerk, when's his birthday. We'd send him a card, anything. Hey, we can't wait to see you back again.
Well, and if you see the end of the casino, when they're saying now it's built by pyramids, etc., and they're showing the mirage, and De Niro actually says that, now it's some kid out of college wants to know what your bank account number is before who you are or your history. It was sad. I think it's changed a little more to the positive. But, customer service is what it's all about. And, I worked on a film called Beautiful Joe with Billy Connolly and Sharon Stone. And Sharon was a degenerate gambler in the film.
I remember that movie.
Yeah, we shot it in Vancouver, and I taught them how to play and everything. So I asked Sharon with the movie Casino, what got you into that? Because she really sunk down. You saw her, and by the end there, my God, she says, I literally lived that. Like, I literally became that character when we were off the set. She was just, and it was interesting how you see how she fell down, and how I thought Scorsese portrayed that so amazingly, that film. And then, A Small World, Oscar Goodman, for our former mayor, who was in that film, who played himself as the lawyer, because he was Spilatro's lawyer and many others. He was one of the founders of the Mob Museum here in Nevada. And if you're coming to Nevada or live here, please make a point of seeing it. I'm on their advisory council. And on Thursday night, Thursday the 17th of this month, being February, we are having their first annual gala, Undercover of the Night Gala. It is the National Museum of Law Enforcement and Organized Crime. We are honoring all those famous undercover agents, including Joe Pistone, who was Donnie Brasco. And I think there are some tickets still available. And it's a wonderful evening. And the museum does so much work in the schools. People aren't aware that it's not just a phenomenal museum. And many of my memorabilia pieces from when I worked on Casino and others are there. You'll see them in there, and some of my slot machines, which I think there's some photos you'll see of the one-armed bandits I have in my collection. But this organization, because it's a 501c organization, It does a number of work in the community with schools, with educational programs, working with young children, giving them education to understand to make the right choice instead of the bad choice in the past. The museum talks everything about the history of organized crime to today, where, you know, we think about what is really happening today. Well, there's counterfeit billion-dollar products that are going around. There's illegal gambling that we know about. There is human trafficking. There is the whole fentanyl crisis that is around North America, and that's all done through often organized crime. So they talk about that. They also talk about the cat and mouse business and how the FBI and law enforcement do that. So this is the Undercover of the Night Gala, and we're celebrating all those in law enforcement. And this is the 10th anniversary, so it's their first gala. And I've been honored to have been coming back the last year to help as part of the committee member for that event.
That is
Wow,
great.
that's
That is
really
great,
neat.
Howard, because, you know, that was the place. I have a picture of me and my mom on the steps to go get our mail. That's where you got your mail.
Sure, of
That
course.
was, you know, and those, I'm sure Oscar was probably the main man responsible for saying, don't knock it down. And what
Absolutely.
a tremendous asset, not only to the town, but what you just said.
And the
Unbelievable.
Kefauver hearings were held there in the
Yes.
courtroom, and the courtroom is still there, and it will be part of the event.
Exactly. It's just it's
Exactly.
beautiful. We went down there a few years ago. me
Yeah,
and
when they
Danny.
were talking about Jimmy Shagra.
Yeah,
Right.
we went down there. They were up on stage
And
talking about
if you love gambling, there's a whole floor devoted to the history of Vegas. And right now, there's a special on the anniversary of the Flamingo, which I believe it's the 75th. Am I correct?
Yes.
it. Yes.
75th anniversary of the Flamingo, and there's so many amazing artifacts and memorabilia there. So do check it out. It's a phenomenal place, and I'm just so thrilled to be able to be a small part in that big wheel.
That's
His town's changing, but it's just getting better and better and better and bigger. Like I said, the Mob Museum, that just brings so much to everybody in town that can go. Now, if you're a local, you can get in there for free.
Well,
Right now, you can.
On the 14th, on
Oh,
their
the 14th,
anniversary
is it?
date, yes, you can.
Okay, you get in for free.
Yeah.
So it's well worth it. If you've never been down there, please go down there and check that out.
It also talks about, you know, how Vegas had segregation. And, you know, and you don't think of that because you see we're so far west, you wouldn't think that there were issues, but there were many entertainers of color who weren't even allowed to go in the front door of a place. And it was sad because it's, you know, a dark stain on the history of it, but it's told, and I think it needs to be told, needs to be shared, you know, never again to have that happen. And Don Rickles, who's a dear family friend of mine and almost like an uncle to me, he told me those stories and how Frank stood up and said, Sammy's staying here.
Yes,
And if he
that's
doesn't,
correct.
and then after Sammy came so many, Ella Fitzgerald, all the others, Louis Armstrong. It was a wonderful because up until that time they were staying. I guess it would be northwest of the Strip, correct?
They would call it Vegas Heights, which is known as the West Side,
The
The West Side,
where
yes.
the Moulin Rouge was.
Right, and they're rebuilding the Moulin Rouge. I hear.
Are they?
That's what I heard. Or is it the Fountain Blue they're rebuilding?
Fountain Blue
they're
Fountain Blue.
Fountain Blue.
Yeah.
Well, they had railroad tracks going down on the west side, and nobody crossed the railroad tracks. That's
Literally,
just
like you
when
hear,
we
don't
were
cross the
growing up.
tracks.
You
Yeah.
just don't cross the tracks.
No.
But I'm glad to see that all that is going wayside. It's pretty much all gone now as far as.
Well, and here's a great Las Vegas story. You'll enjoy this. So, at the Golden Steer, Frank would go there, and it's still open. It's one of the best steakhouses. I recommend anyone, whether you live here or you're coming, to go to the Golden Steer. Make a reservation. Maybe I'll get a free baked potato this time, right? And they're built. The baked potatoes are from Chernobyl. They're like 10 pounds. So this was interesting. So after, and you know, back in the day, artists would do 3 or 4 sets. So it was like 4 a.m. they'd come off. The Golden Steer would still stay open because everybody came. So Frank was there in a big booth, and he has his own booth. So was Don Rickles. He was dating a young lady. This was in the 60s, maybe early 70s, before he got married. And he went over to Frank. He said, Frank, when you have a sec, I got this beautiful showgirl. Would you mind stopping by and saying hello? And he said, yeah, of course, be happy to. So Don's sitting there with her. Dessert comes. Frank looks, goes, oh, I better stop by. So he walks over, goes, Don, how are you? And who's this lovely lady? To which Rickles says, Frank, can't you see I'm busy here?
Yes, iconic.
True.
Iconic.
And the other one, also at the Golden Steer, which is a great story, and they'll probably share it if you go there and ask, is Frank is known for having probably 20 people with him at the end of a set. They were at the Sands. It would be 3 a.m. They're coming for a good dinner and a meal. They sit down, and there's the long table. They're all at it. One of the guys, waiter, sets down a ketchup bottle. Okay. One guy goes to get the ketchup put it on, and Frank is incensed. I mean, you don't go for a nice steakhouse and have ketchup to ruin your meal, right? Frank grabs the bottle, throws it, it flies, hits the wall, and sprays everywhere. And of course, everybody is scared to say a word. They're like this, especially the guy who had the ketchup bottle. And Frank's just fuming. And then Rico stops and goes, "Frank, could you pass the ketchup?" And that broke everything up. And only Don could get away with something like that.
Oh my gosh,
That's true.
That speaking of Frank, his when he would I worked at Caesar's Palace for 22 years, and Frank, of course, was appearing there, and his bodyguard and good friend Jilly Rizzo.
Jilly, sure.
Which I knew Jilly through his son Willie, who was a floorman there. And Jilly would be telling stories, and it was just fantastic to be able to listen to that, because here I am, this kid, sitting there dealing to these people, and they're telling stories that you wouldn't be in that circle unless the crap table was the center of attention.
And it was funny, Don would tell me all the famous entertainers who were cheap and the ones that gave. I will never repeat it, but it was very interesting. Some you'd think would give the world, didn't give anything. Others you wouldn't think to gave everything. The other story, you talking about Jilly, when he passed away in that car accident in California.
Horrible,
My
yes.
dear friend Tonio Podesano, was Frank Sinatra's road manager, and he lived with him, and he was there with him when he passed, etc. Then he became Don Rickles when Rickles, a longtime road manager, left and passed away. So Tony, who's written a book all about Frank and that, I'm trying to get him to the Mob Museum, but he's got amazing stories, both modern with Don and back in the day with Frank. He was discovered by Frank in New York. He was a pianist and a singer.
Wow. Maybe you could get him on the show.
Oh, I would love to have him come over
here. And you and him could go back and forth. It'd be like an iconic tennis match.
Yeah, Tonio is amazing. Yeah. I will send him the link to this and get him to watch, because we love Tonio. He's amazing, and his book is on the bestseller list.
Wow, good for him. Congratulations, Tony.
Absolutely, congratulations. Yeah, who was that singer out here that Frank picked up? She was in a little lounge show. She had a little
Denise
lounge,
Richards? Denise Clemente.
Denise Clemente.
Yes.
He picked her up because he heard her singing one night in a lounge show. He picked her up and made her go in front of him like at Caesar's, where he was appearing there. And she opened up for him. I don't know what happened to Denise. I was wondering whatever happened.
I don't know.
What
I'm sure she's still alive.
Oh.
And the film director's daughter, Liza's sister, Liza Minnelli's sister.
Lana, was it?
I'm trying to think of.
I know who. It's on the tip of my tongue. Yes.
Yeah, but she performed here, and she would open for Rickles all the time. Can't think of her. It'll come to me. I'm sure someone's screaming right now. I know.
I know that name.
Yeah.
God bless him, Don Rickles. I'd go see him at the Sahara.
Yeah.
Was it Don the Beachcomber?
Don the Beachcomber. That's right. In the Beachcomber. Yeah. Right.
I'd
he'd do a breakfast show at 4 a.m. Like I wish I was around in those days, and you guys were, and I wish I was able to be there to see when you dressed up. And there were no women dealers back then, right? It was all men.
It was all men.
All men. There was never any women in dice at all.
And very few women wagering too, right? It was generally men to men,
It was
right?
really all men.
Yeah.
Now,
women would play the slots.
5 o'clock, you had to be in suit and tie,
Right.
or you couldn't even play the game.
You couldn't even come in as a customer if you were dressed up. It must have been very elegant. They talk about the mafia and how when they ran it here, forget the bad stuff, in terms of actually running it, which I always said, well, why not just run it on the up and up? You're making enough money. Why do you have to skim? Because people were saying they were amazing employers back in the day. Like
they were great.
They were.
For us, they were great.
Yeah, it's interesting.
They
were.
really took care of you.
My Juice ended up going to run the Stardust back in '77 after he had already schooled Steve Wynn. When Steve Wynn bought the Golden Nugget in '73, I was there. And then he got me in. I had to go see Lefty Rosenthal, who did not look like De Niro, I can tell you that. He was a big, tall, lanky guy with red hair.
Right. Had the pink outfit all the time.
So I went, I said,
and the pink car, right?
Yeah. I said, Mr. Rosenthal, Murray sent me in. He goes, okay, go see Vince DeMarco. And they called this guy's nickname was Eye on the Rug because he was so short. You'd say, where is he? Oh, there he is. So he says, all right, kid, go get on the base. Then I'll get you on the stick. So I'd been dealing 4 years already. And I was following the procedure and everything, then go on the stick. And then he says, all right, kid, you seem like you... Now, don't go out there and rough hustle. You can make a nice living, but don't break any arms. I go, yes, Mr. Mark. And then I went back. I said, thank you, Mr. Rosenthal. He says, all right. He says, it's a good job. Keep your head down. Take care of the people, and you'll make a little money.
And you think about Mr. Rosenthal, he developed the sports book from out being in little tiny places to being there today. What we see today is because of him.
Of course.
Like there's some
absolutely.
amazing things of progression in how Nevada was due to people like Lefty Rosenthal.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
There's no doubt about it. And when he'd have his show, and he'd
Yes,
have that
Aces
showgirl.
High. Aces High.
Aces High, exactly. And he'd have the showgirls on. Mr. Rosenthal, the finest handicapper in the nation. And then he'd have all these guests. Sinatra was a guest on a couple occasions, and all these sports figures.
And he did that show because he was angry at the gaming commission that wouldn't
Absolutely.
give him his license.
Absolutely.
Which is funny because, if you watch the movie, one of the commissioner's cousins was juiced in and he
Yes.
was a failure. And he said, I can't have a failure. Which shows you, knowing that you could just have him and deal with it, but he was such a perfectionist. He literally got himself out of Vegas because his
That's
perfection
correct.
caused it.
That's
which
correct.
Is,
Yes.
Isn't that
amazing.
something?
Yes.
We got an email in last week that somebody asked a question, what are pips on the dice? And I needed to explain that real quick because the pips are the dots on the dice, the little white dots that they do. And that's what pips are. They're drilled in, but they use a paint that's almost the same. Certain depths are different than the other ones to make it all even to where they
For the
can
weight.
finish the weight.
Pure, yes.
So they make them pure and everything. So that's a pip. It's the spots on the dice. So when I talked about, they told me to go get the spots for the dice at a different hotel. Breaking in, that's when I got those little hole puncher, and I punched them and I brought them in and dropped them down. Remember the old white?
Sure, of course.
There's your pips.
You
But
wonder
I
if
wanted to explain that.
Gladys Knight and the Pips
And-
got that from
Gladys Knight
rolling
and
the
the
dice in back alleys.
And if you love die, if you look, we call it bottom scottum, as you know.
Yes.
The opposite of the die on top is at the bottom, so each one makes a 7,
Yes.
which is very interesting. What's the most common number to be made? A 7.
7.
And it pays 4-1, but the true odds are 5-1.
Yes.
So there's your house edge, right?
That's
right.
right. And the first casino to get busted for cheating was in 1964 was the Silver Slipper. They had using shaved dice.
Yeah, they did.
Against the players.
Yeah, of course.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's funny, superstition. When I worked on the road in Calgary and Edmonton, we had a casino with just roulette tables and then wheels, because you're only allowed wheels. You couldn't have cards back in the
Right.
day. My boss, the 75-year-old I was telling you, who owned the company, would pour salt on the corners of all the tables because it was good luck for the house.
Yes.
And I always laugh, we're just finishing Chinese New Year's, and if you've been to a casino and you see it's a big, big deal, I always go, well, are all those dragons and the dance and the wonderful lycée, the red envelopes, are they for the house or are they for the customer?
Gosh. Yeah, we've seen a lot of matches, matchsticks crossed. We've seen pennies on the ground, salt over the shoulder. We've seen it all. It was
On both sides, from the
both
player
sides.
and the...
Oh, yes.
It was very funny to see all that.
Amazing. I hope when Howard comes back again, I'd love to have him back on the show
Absolutely.
because I'm fascinated with everything that you've been saying. It's great because you're definitely knowledgeable about being in the business and how you started as a charity thing and managed to make it a career.
Isn't that funny? You can sit with somebody like Howard, and he can just enlighten you with stuff that we never even really thought of. And then it all starts you going, wow! Just to listen to him, like I said, it just opened my whole perspective of things. It's really nice.
Well, thank you guys for having me. I have a great collection of Vegas memorabilia. Many of it is at the Mob Museum, so I encourage you to come out. And if you'd like to see some of the great photos over the years, I have my own site, which is Point Blank, my company name, pointblankshows.com. Or my handle, if you want to see me on LinkedIn or Instagram and everything, is Howard Blank Live, Live. Sort of like we are right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm going to go, as soon as I leave here, I'm going to stop and get some popcorn and I'm going to go watch Howard. Are you kidding?
Yeah, it'd be it'd be a lot of fun.
That's outstanding.
Yeah, he's been
outstanding.
a lot of fun with it.
Oh, God.
Are you kidding me?
We could do a 4-hour show.
Oh, absolutely. The stuff, I'm telling you, I've talked to him before, and just stuff he has it's incredible. It's just, it's crazy.
And, you know, we're coming up on the 50th anniversary of Godfather, the movie.
Wow,
I've
50
got
years.
original posters signed by the cast and my casino stuff. So maybe next time, because I've got to bring it for the museum, we'll do a little show and tell. I'll bring some of the memorabilia.
Oh, that'd be a lot of
That'd
fun.
be great,
great,
Howard.
so-
Absolutely.
Thank you for having me.
You got the green light and carte blanche to come back anytime.
Well, thank you.
Thank you so
Yeah,
much,
all
Howard.
Nice to
Thank
meet you.
A pleasure. A
Thanks
pleasure.
again. And may your rolls always be hot, and your lengthy time on the table be fun, and your pockets be full.
Excellent,
very-
excellent. And
very
keep your
well
eye
put.
on the pips, whatever you do.
Yeah, don't lose sight
Performing
of
3 shows nightly.
Nightly. Yes, yes.
Don't ever lose sight of them pips.
No, absolutely.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you,
for
everyone.
watching.
Keep
Appreciate
watching.
it.
And please, go see the Mob Museum.
Yes,
Howard
Vegas
is
Ice
100% right. It's an outstanding venue, and you can learn so much. Believe
Yes.
me.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Keep watching.